so much. You may be seated. At this time, we have another command performance. It is a famous speech from Lighthouse Academy, Floyd, Iowa.
Hello, my name is Dylan Laminin from Lighthouse Academy in Floyd, Iowa, and the famous speech I'll be performing for you today is William Wilberforce's abolition speech. When I consider the magnitude of the subject which I am to bring before the House, a subject in which the interests, not of this country, nor of Europe alone, but of the whole world and of posterity are involved. And when I think, at the same time, on the weakness of the advocate who has undertaken this great cause, when these reflections press upon my mind, it is impossible for me not to feel both terrified and concerned at my own inadequacy to such a task. But when I reflect, however, on the encouragement which I have had through the whole course of a long and laborious examination of this question, and how much candor I have experienced, and how conviction has increased within my own mind in proportion as I have advanced in my labors. When I reflect especially that however averse any gentleman may now be, yet we shall all be of one opinion in the end. When I turn myself to these thoughts, I take courage. I determine to forget all my other fears, and I march forward with a firmer step, in the full assurance that my cause will bear me out, and that I shall be able to justify upon the clearest principles every resolution in my hand, the avowed end of which is the total abolition of the slave trade. Having now disposed of the first part of this subject, I must speak of the transit of the slaves in the West Indies. This, I confess, in my own opinion, is the most wretched part of the whole subject. So much misery, condensed in so little room, is more than the human imagination had ever before conceived. I will not accuse the Liverpool merchants. I will allow them, nay, I will believe them to be men of humanity. And I will therefore believe that if it were not for the enormous magnitude and extent of the evil which distracts their attention from individual cases, and makes them think generally, and therefore less feelingly on the subject, that they never would have persisted in the trade. I verily believe, therefore, if the wretchedness of any one of the many hundred Negroes stowed in each ship could be brought before their view and remain within the sight of the African merchant, that there is no one among them whose heart would bear it. Let anyone imagine to himself 600 or 700 of these wretches chained two and two, surrounded with every object that is nauseous and disgusting, diseased, and struggling under every kind of wretchedness. For the sake of exercise, these miserable wretches, loaded with chains, oppressed with disease and wretchedness, are forced to dance by the terror of the lash, and sometimes by the actual use of it. I, says one of the other evidences, was employed to dance the men, while another person danced the women. Such, then, is the meaning of the word promoted. And it may be observed, too, with respect to food, that an instrument is sometimes carried out in order to force them to eat, which is the same sort of proof how much they enjoy themselves in that instance also. As to their singing, what shall we say when we are told that their songs are songs of lamentation upon their departure, which, while they sing, are always in tears? Insomuch that one captain, more humane as I should conceive him therefore than the rest, threatened one of the women with a flogging because the mournfulness of her song was too painful for his feelings. In order, however, not to trust too much to any sort of description, I will call the attention of the House to one species of evidence which is absolutely infallible. Death, at least, is a sure ground of evidence. And the proportion of deaths will not only confirm, but if possible, will even aggravate our suspicion of their misery in the transit. It will be found upon an average of all the ships of which evidence has been given at the Privy Council, that exclusive of those who perish before they sail, not less than 12.5% perish in the passage. Besides these, the Jamaica report tells you that not less than 4.5% die on shore before the day of sail, which is only a week or two from the time of landing. 1/3 more die in the seasoning. And this in a country exactly like their own, where they are healthy and happy, as some of the evidences would pretend. The diseases, however, which they contract on shipboard, these stringent washes which are to hide their wounds, and the mischievous tricks used to put them up for sale, are, as the Jamaica report says, a most precious and valuable report, which I shall often have to avert to, one principal cause of this mortality. Upon the whole, however, here is a mortality of about 50%. And this among Negroes who are not bought unless, as the phrase is with cattle, they are sound in wind and limb. How then can the House refuse its belief to the multiplied testimonies before the Privy Council of the savage treatment of the Negroes in the Middle Passage? Nay, indeed, what need is there of any evidence? The number of deaths speaks for itself and makes all such inquiry superfluous. As soon as ever I had arrived thus far in my investigation of the slave trade, I confess to you, sir, so enormous, so dreadful, so irremediable did its wickedness appear, that my own mind was completely made up for the abolition. A trade founded on iniquity and carried on as this was, must be abolished. Let the policy be what it might, let the consequences be what they would. I from this time determined that I would never rest till I had effected its abolition.